House Republicans have finally released their budget plan, and in order to pay for the absolutely massive trillion-strong tax cuts for the wealthiest people in the country, they're doing exactly what we said they would do. They're cutting funding for Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps, all of these programs. And that's bad, okay? We do have a little bit of good news. We're gonna get to that, okay? But there's a lot of bad news along the way. The cuts are the first bad news, then it's gonna get worse actually. So the early budget includes a statement where representatives on the House Budget Committee pledged to cut a whopping $2 trillion in mandatory spending. While the text doesn't mention Medicaid by name, it directs the Energy and Commerce Committee to cut $880 billion at its budget, which is near impossible to do without touching the healthcare program. And of course they're gonna do it. They've been desperate to do it for a long time. It is money that goes to people who have the least, so obviously it will be cut first to make way for more riches for the rich. It also directs the Agriculture Committee to find $230 billion in cuts, which seems to indicate that SNAP will be cut by at least 20%. That's what's left of SNAP, by the way. SNAP gets cut massively every time a Republican gets into office. So we're just talking about more cuts to SNAP on top of that. So what does this mean? Well, the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, they noted that 36 million people or more could be at risk of losing their health coverage through Medicaid. So 36 million of the people who least can afford to lose their health insurance could lose their health insurance. 40 million people could receive less help from SNAP to buy groceries, especially as inflation continues to rise under Donald Trump's seemingly like crusade to make sure that inflation is as bad as possible. Millions of them could potentially lose all of their food assistance altogether. On top of that, the Education and Workforce Committee has been allocated $330 billion in cuts, which is expected to come from student loan programs. So you're gonna be even more in a debt spiral thanks to that. And so all of that is bad. All these cuts are bad. Here's what's worse. That's not even close to enough to pay for the tax cuts. That's less than half of what is now estimated the cuts will cost. And so there's either trillions more cuts coming or just trillions more that will go to the national debt. The exact same thing that happened in Donald Trump's first term is happening again. Now I'll have a little bit of good news that'll have to wait for a second. Francesca, I wanna give you a chance to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, it is a wealth transfer. That is what we are seeing before our very eyes. It's a wealth transfer from the poor, the disabled, the most vulnerable in our society, those who can barely put a meal on the table, transferring their money to Elon Musk and his cronies and to these people who do not need the money. The first Trump tax cuts gave millionaires and billionaires the ability, or anyone, the ability to write off a private jet, a $600 million expense. Can you write that off this coming tax season? It's right around the corner. What are you being told you can and cannot write off? Meanwhile, they gut the IRS, so actually holding any of the actual tax dodgers should they decide to do so, that's beyond what the IRS can do. So this is a class war, and this is the most obvious evidence of it. Now, the good part is they're trying to go through Congress for the first time since Donald Trump's, was sworn in. So we have a chance to stop it. And my guess is they will not be able to pass this through the Republican House if people make noise about it. If you call your estranged Republican Trump voting relatives and tell them what is up, tell them what's going on, and see if they're prepared to allow either themselves, their loved ones, or their community members to quite literally die of starvation because of these cuts in order to allow billionaires to write off their eighth home or whatever it is. So I don't know, John. I mean, the other thing that worries me is that because they don't have enough, there's not even enough money. Again, 880 billion is not enough. They're just gonna illegally keep doing it. I mean, the legal limbo of this seizure of all of our federal funding is not gonna play out quickly, right? And it will be and has been ignored by Doggy and Donald Trump. So I'm terrified. I think they're just gonna take the money no matter what.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Like this, at least there hopefully will be some news cycles about this and all of the bizarre changes they're making. I would sort of understand this as a consequence if America had been doing so well for years and years and years, and everyone was doing well, and then they're like, let's just go crazy for a bit. But the idea that a desperate American electorate would turn wildly to Donald Trump as their like last bet, we need help. And instead they just get punched in the genitals over and over and over again. Yep. It's a strange turn of events. Members make a difference here at TYT. You help make the show happen, and we see you in the chat with your loyalty badge. Click the join button to become a member today.